Hello, this is Matthew, and today, because I don't know, we like pain or something, we are going to install the Oracle Relational Database Management System version 11G R2 on OpenVMS for Itanium. Now, I don't know why anyone would run Oracle on OpenVMS. Quite frankly, I don't know why anyone would use Oracle for any new project these days. However, there's a lot of legacy use of it. I still can't imagine that it ever made sense to run it on OpenVMS. There is a much better relational database product for OpenVMS called RDB. RDB is now owned by Oracle, so it's Oracle RDB. But RDB was originally designed specifically for OpenVMS by Digital, and then Oracle eventually bought it to add to their database portfolio. But RDB is fully aware of everything that makes OpenVMS unique. It can use all the clustering capabilities, and it really is baked into how OpenVMS and VMS clusters work. Whereas Oracle on OpenVMS is kind of a port of the Unix version of Oracle, and so it doesn't really do anything unique to OpenVMS. It just feels a little bit odd to work with as an administrator when you're used to Oracle on Unix, because, of course, there are some differences between OpenVMS and Unix. However, the reasons one may or may not use Oracle is really not the point of this video. Oracle is just something that I tend to install on a lot of platforms and have had some experience with in the past. So I was curious to see just how it works on OpenVMS. And that is our reason for installing it, not because we actually plan on using it for anything, but because learning is a good goal unto itself. So we have our terminal window, as always. I'll also be flipping back and forth between the web browser. So to get started, Oracle actually makes almost all of their products available for development, basically under a tech development license for no cost. So if you just search for Oracle downloads, let's see what we get here. Database software downloads. And if we scroll down, you can see the current version. There is no VMS build. 18C, there is no VMS build. 12C, there is no VMS build. Although there's our HPUX Itanium. 12C release 1. 11G release 2. And sure enough, 11.2.04, we have support for OpenVMS. So you can download this file. You'll just need to sign up for a free oracle.com login if you don't have one, accept the license agreement, which restricts its usage to strictly development purposes. And then if you download that, it's a couple of gigabytes. So to save some time, I've already downloaded that. And if we go to my VMS system, you can see I have sent that file up to my VMS system. I just FTP'd it up there. In fact, if you do dir size, you can see it's about 2 gigabytes. So that's already uploaded. The most important thing you're going to need is the installation documentation. So you can say Oracle installation guide, and we'll find some documentation here. The 11G release 2 is exactly what we need. It's a little bit coincidental that that's my first hit. It may be prioritizing that because it knows what I'm looking for. If you're just looking for it for the first time, search for Oracle documentation. If you go to the Oracle Help Center, you can click on Database and then Oracle Database. Change the version to 11G release 2, since that's the version we have for VMS. And then if you go to the installing and upgrading topic, we'll land on our Oracle database, installing and upgrading. And if you scroll down, you'll see the different platforms, Solaris, HPUX, AIX, and you'll eventually hit HP OpenVMS Itanium. So we're going to read the database installation guide for HP OpenVMS Itanium. And of course, you can see this is divided into a number of sections. We can quickly look at pre-installation tasks. One thing to note, if we look at checking software requirements, this is basic stuff. We have OpenVMS Itanium version 8.4. We did install the Deck Windows motif support when we installed OpenVMS. I had mentioned during the installation video that I was installing motif because the Oracle installer would require it. We don't really need to worry about the dev kit or anything like that. And if we keep going down, here we go. So these are the patches to VMS 8.4 that Oracle requires. Now we are running VMS 8.4 update version 14. Update version 14 already incorporates all of these versions of the individual system patches. The Oracle installer doesn't know that. It has a check patches script that's going to look for patches with these specific names at greater than these versions. That will fail because we don't have these patches installed. We have the OpenVMS Update v14 installed, which supersedes all of these patches. So we're going to hit that, but there's a workaround for that. So I just want to make you aware of that as you're looking through this document. And we don't really need to worry about too much of this stuff. Creating the Oracle user, this is important. So we're going to create our Oracle Dbca user. This will also be the Oracle software owner or the Oracle installation owner if you've done this on Unix platforms before. And let's see. So it's giving us an example of adding an Oracle user to the user authorization file. The user requires a number of privileges, so this is a very powerful account. Basically, syspriv gives it the ability to operate as the system. So it's not quite all privileges, but it's powerful enough that it can essentially do anything on the system and access anything on the system. So it is an account you want to keep well protected. So we'll grant it the privileges, and then we will need to increase its quotas on a lot of these items that you can set quotas for on VMS accounts. And then we will also create some rights identifiers. These are things that would be groups on Unix installations. However, in OpenVMS, a user can only belong to a single group. So I can't have a user that is in an Oracle DBA group and an Oracle installation owner group or something like that. But what we have in VMS instead of multiple groups for users is you can define arbitrary rights identifiers. And you can then grant those rights identifiers to users. And then for things like ACLs for file access, you're able to grant particular rights identifiers access, and anyone who has been granted that rights identifier has access. So they're basically like secondary groups on Unix in practice. They're just called something different, and they are distinct from the group membership on VMS. So we'll create our Oracle DBA rights identifier, which will just grant our Oracle user DBA access to any Oracle database we create on this machine. If you want to split up administration between different Oracle database instances on the machine, you have some examples of here of inclusive and exclusive rights identifiers based on the database's system identifier. Okay, so we're going to need to add an identifier. We'll grant that identifier to our Oracle account. The SGA, before you start, add this rights if it does not exist. So it looks like we'll need to add another identifier there and set some default file creation permissions. And we'll probably need to up our global sections or global pages. So there's going to be an autogen run here, which of course will require a reboot. And then I think after we do all of that, let's see. Yep. So this is now kind of walking you through creating that user again. Yeah. So once we do all of that, we will be ready to install. I think the rest of this is more informational and we don't need to take any specific actions. Yeah. If you're upgrading, this is talking about stopping existing processes, the home environment for our user, and then more information. So that seems straightforward enough. It's just a few steps we need to go through to do all of this. So back to the top, the first thing I think we needed to do was create our Oracle user. Creating a user account. Okay. So we're going to create a user. They're using 277 as the group identifier, and then user number 100. We may as well use that because we don't have any other particular assignment scheme. So let me switch back over to my VMS system and set process privileges equals all. So I essentially become the super user. And then we're going to set our default to, doesn't need to be sysmanage. Is that where? Nope. What's the, where's the authorize command live? Set def sys system run authorize. Yeah, there we go. So we can add our user. I'm just going to call it Oracle, and I'm going to give it a password of Oracle. The UIC will be that 277100 identifier that the documentation used as an example. We will put this user's home directory on our user's device, and that directory will be called Oracle to match the username. We'll give it a friendly name in lists. We'll call it Oracle DBA. And like the other accounts I created, I'm going to say no password life so the password doesn't expire. And then flag equals no disable, no dis user. Did I type that correctly? No dis user. Yep. So that the account is enabled and we can log in as Oracle. Okay, looks like that succeeded. So let's go back to the documentation. We need to add all of these privileges to the account. And luckily, they gave us a command here to do that. So I'm going to copy that portion of the command, and we'll just say modify Oracle. Remember, we used a different username. So modify Oracle, and then we'll paste in the rest of that command. Mod Oracle paste. Perfect. So the dash at the end of the line is the continuation character for DCL. Okay, so this granted the user these privileges. It also set the default privileges when the user logs in to have all those privileges enabled. Remember, when I'm logged in as my M. Wilson normal user account, while I have all of these privileges and more, we didn't change the default privileges. So I have to do that set process privileges equals all to actually enable those privileges. For this account, when we log in as Oracle, we will already have all of these privileges set for our process. Now, if we go back to the documentation, we're going to need to set all of these quotas to higher values. And the way we do that is by modifying the user, and then there is a parameter for each of these quota names. So let me see if I can, I'm going to leave full screen in my terminal here, and I'm going to try and bring that Firefox window over. Okay, so this is tiny for now, but we'll be able to see these side by side. So I can just type these all in. So we're going to modify Oracle, and then we just do slash the quota name and the value. So I can do slash copy and paste that equals 250 byte buffered IO limit. This is 750,000. I've noticed if you set it to 750,000, when I log in, it ends up being a little bit less. So I'm just going to bump that up to 800,000 to make sure that we actually get that full quota amount. And Q quota is 2,000. Open file quota is 2,048. Job table quota is 8,192. Max detach, it looks like that's default 0. Max jobs, default 0, so we don't need to change those. Paging file quota, 2 million. That should be the right number of zeros. Subprocess quota, 32. working set default 2048, working set extent 8192, and working set quota 4096. User record updated. Okay, let's get rid of that other window, get this back in full screen. So if I show Oracle, here you can see all of those quotas. So you can see like 2 million is one that we set, that 800,000. You can see all of these are set correctly, as well as all of the privileges. And this user should be ready to go. So we exit UAF, and before we forget, we want to create a directory with the owner Oracle, and that's going to be users Oracle. Okay, so that user has a home directory now. Let's go back to the documentation. We did the quotas. Okay, process rights for database administrators. So we also want to add, again, I'm just going to add a generic Oracle DBA process identifier. So that's add identifier or a DBA, and then grant identifier or a DBA to our Oracle user. So run authorize again. Add identifier or a DBA, and then grant identifier or a DBA to the Oracle user. Perfect. And then it looks like we also need an identifier for Aura SGA with the subsystem attribute. We will just copy and paste that. Okay. And we can exit. So now let's try logging in as that Oracle user. So exit authorize, log out, and telnet back to the system as Oracle with my super secure password Oracle. Okay, we have an empty home directory. That's fine. That's what we'd expect. And if we go back to the documentation, it looks like it wants us to set our default file protection for files that this user creates to have world read and execute access, which is not the default. So to make that persist across logins, it's saying we should put this in our login.com file. So let's copy that, and we can edit login.com, paste that in, and Control Z to exit. So now just to demonstrate that, I could just run, in fact, let me do that. I could run login.com again. And then if I show protection, you can see the default protection here, which took effect. And then on future logins, because login.com runs automatically, we'll have those updated default protections. Okay, sysgen. So reserved memory, they recommend not setting this up until you have tuned your Oracle instance and you know what you want your SGA size to be. So we'll go ahead and skip that for now. And let's see, where does it tell us? Did I miss the... I missed the section with the required... Sorry, let me just start back at the top again and make sure I didn't miss anything. Maybe it comes later. Because at some point we'll need to set the global sections higher, I think. Account quotas, process rights, file permissions. Oh, interesting. So there's a README that tells you how to calculate. So it's possible when I run the installer, it might tell me I need more. Okay, that's all good. Okay, maybe I won't need to change those. That's fine, and that's fine. Okay, so as the system user, we created our server account. We're not going to be using the Apache web server. Okay, so this is where it starts getting interesting. The Oracle installer is a graphical X Windows application. Now, I don't have a monitor hooked up locally to the server, but you can forward, well, X as a protocol works over the network. And in particular, you can forward an X connection over SSH. So let me switch back here. We've been telnetting into the server, but we also enabled the SSH server when we set up the TCP IP services. So if I just say SSH, we'll try and log in as the Oracle account at MWVMS 1. My version of SSH is much too new and has disabled a lot of older, less secure legacy protocols for things like key exchange and the host key algorithm and the message authentication code algorithm and even the encryption algorithms itself. So this is telling me, you know, hey, the server offered Diffie-Hellman Group 1 SHA-1, which is something that my SSH client refuses to use by default. So you can still re-enable a lot of these old options, and the current version of SSH still has support for the right mix of options that will work with VMS. So let me go to my command history because there's quite a bit to remember here. So I'm going to run SSH with the option of the key exchange algorithm, Diffie-Hellman Group 1 SHA-1, the host key algorithm, I'm going to allow SSH DSS, the cipher, I'm going to allow AES 128 with cipher block chaining, and the MAC will be HMAC with SHA-1. The last option here, -X, tells SSH to set up an X11 forwarding gateway. And then it looks like I was logging as M. Wilson, so let's change this to Oracle. And that tells SSH to log in as the Oracle user at that host. There we go. Welcome to OpenVMS. So my password, and we're logged in. Now, what's cool is if I run, let me leave full screen here so this window will pop up in this workspace. If I run, let's see, in fact, the manual, let me go back to the instructions here. Yeah, so we can test this by running syssystem deck windows clock. Let's run syssystem deck w clock. And there we go. So this is an X Windows application executing on the VMS server, but then the display protocol is forwarding. I guess, let's see. This is an X client running on the OpenVMS server, and my X server here on my local Linux desktop is displaying it because that display is forwarded through SSH. Okay, so we know that our SSH X forwarding is working. That's good. We're not going to worry about setting up the batch queue for Oracle Enterprise Manager agent because we're not going to use the Enterprise Manager agent. And we don't need to worry about existing net services. The software directories will create, we'll let the installer create for us, blah, blah, blah. So we only have 2 hard drives in this machine, kind of the system drive and the data drive, which doesn't really give us the optimal flexibility in terms of laying out the software installation and data files and recovery files. Ideally, if we just had a little one-use server like this with limited capacity to hold different physical spindles, you'd be deploying this against SAN or something where you have just fiber channel connections to your big disk arrays. But again, this is just for kind of testing or development and learning about the process. So we're not trying to build a real production quality database installation here. Stop existing. There are no existing Oracle processes. So display gets that X forwarding. The X forwarding through SSH takes care of setting the display automatically. And it looks like we just want to then set no verify, enable all of our privileges, which all the privileges that we're allowed to have are already enabled. And then there's a run installer script that will kick off the installer. So let's switch back over to our system. There is one thing we haven't done yet, which is to actually unzip that download. So what directory am I in? I'm in my home directory. So I have that download file in my mwilson users directory. And in fact, I don't remember what that's called. So let me log in as mwilson. Okay, so VMS 11204db.zip. And I already changed the file protection on that. Actually, I didn't. So we need to add read access to the entire world so that the Oracle user will be able to just directly unzip this out of my home directory. I don't want to bother copying around and making another copy of it. So we can set security protection equals, and then we can add to the world read access to that file. So now if we look at the protection, you can see we have read access for the whole world. So we can log back in as Oracle, get the right password. And I'm going to create a directory called maybe Aura Inst. And then we can unzip from users mwilson that file. So this will take a few minutes. So we'll just speed up the video here and I'll be back with you in a few seconds. All right, well, that took a while. Now you can see inside that zip file is actually just another zip file, a README, and then a script to unzip the embedded zip file. So let's take a quick look at what the README is telling us. Okay. It's recommending creating a directory for the kit here. And unzipping the download, which we just did, and then running that to unzip it. Okay, and then after we unzip it, we can run installer, and it will ask for our what we want our Oracle base and Oracle home to be. Specified scratch path, it must not be under the specified Oracle home. Okay, so we'll put scratch somewhere else. Okay, and then it has information about Dbca and a couple of notes about things that are known issues. So netca is not functioning, and we would have to have a support contract to get a patch for that. That's okay. We can manually create TNS names files if we need to. They're just text files. We're not going to try and connect to Oracle 12c because we're using 11. Okay, so that's all reasonable. Nothing particularly of note. Let's go ahead and run this unzip script. Let's see what it says. Okay, here we go. So this unzip script, before it's unzipping, is checking some sysgen parameters. And you can see here that it wants channel count to be at least 2048. Currently, it is 512. So this is something that we need to change by doing an autogen after setting this parameter to a minimum of 2048. So to do that, let's log in as the system user. We can just switch back to Telnet. And this is where we edit is it sys system mod params.dat. Okay, let's add a new line here. Maybe say parameter required for Oracle RDBMS. And it wants the minimum, it was channel count, to be 2048. So we'll save that file. And then the magic autogen command is something like, it's in sys update autogen. We want to get data, which I think tells it to read from our mod params file. We want to reboot automatically after it changes everything. And we don't want to incorporate feedback. So autogen, get data, reboot, no feedback. All right, so this will apply those parameter changes, reboot the system, and then I will be back with you in a couple minutes after all of that is complete. Okay, our system is rebooted. Yeah, it should drop the existing telnet session. And then let's just try connecting directly as the Oracle user again. Great, let's go into aura inst and run that unzip db11204 script again and see what it says. Oh, that's interesting. Let's show dev. Free blocks is greater than 14 million. We have 271 million. Oh. When we initialized this volume, it was not an ODS 5 volume. Can you convert ODS 2 to ODS 5? Sorry, I was just Google searching over somewhere else. Looks like there's a set volume command. Yes. Structure level. Interesting. Okay. I wonder if this works on an online volume. This is the sort of thing you'd take a backup first, but we're just going to try it. Set volume. And what was it? Structure 5? DK 100? Okay, so it can't be mounted. That's fine. Is it dismount DKA 100? Then how do I mount private? Is there just a /private flag? Or probably just without the system flag. Mount DKA 100 data. Okay. Hey, sure enough. Let's see what happens. Wow, okay. Dismount DK100, and then remount it again system-wide. Show dev DK100 full. Scroll up here. Volume status, ODS 5. Yeah. Cool. Okay, we upgraded the file system on this disk. Perfect. Unexpected detour, but good to know we can do that. So now let's reconnect as Oracle and run unzip db11204. See what it complains about next. Aha, nothing. All environment checks are okay. Unzipping. So once again, this unzip will take quite a while. So I will be back with you when it finishes. All right. As expected, that took quite a while. But through the magic of video, you didn't have to sit here and wait for it. So it's telling us we're ready to run the installer. One thing I'm going to do before that is create logical names for the disks that we might use for different purposes for Oracle. We'll see the installer requires us to use logical names, not actual disk device names. And I've also found through my previous attempts to do this that using logical names, concealed logical names pointing to a directory ends up causing an error late in the process where the linker scripts don't run. So we're just going to use logical names for the top level device names, and then we'll just know those are available to us to use for Oracle. So I think this user, this Oracle user, because it has all those privileges, I think it actually has permission to edit my startup file. So sys startup startupvms.com. And we will add the logical names to the startup file so that when we reboot, we don't all of a sudden have problems because they don't exist. So I'm just going to call it Oracle disk 1, and that'll be DKA 0. And then Oracle disk 2 will be DK 100. Kind of my idea is I'm going to have the Oracle Home and the Oracle software installed to our system disk. That's kind of where I've been putting applications. And then the data disk, DK 100, this is where when we create the database, I will have the directory structure for the Oracle database. Okay, so those will be our logical names there. And let's see if I can do that as this user as well. Yep. Okay. So far, so good. I think we can go ahead and run the installer now. That was in disk 1. And run installer. I'm going to leave full screen mode here, so hopefully when this installer pops up, it will be able to float on the screen. Okay, so yeah, this I mentioned earlier. Let's continue. Now we're going to get these errors because it's looking for those patches that that don't exist because we have a different patch installed that supersedes all of them. And so I think if we find a file here, ECO check. So it's running this ECO check script to look for those patches. And if it succeeds, I believe it exits with the exit code of 1. Let's see, exit final exit code. Yeah, so I'm just going to bypass this whole script by at the very top. I'm just going to say exit 1. And I think that will make the installer believe that that script passed. So that's our first hurdle. Let's run the installer again. Yes. Okay, so let's see. It looks like there's something else it didn't like here. OpenVMS does not have a group identifier. This is a necessary component of the orange.look. Your UIC is Oracle. It needs to be of the form group name, comma, Oracle. Okay, so our group number was 277. It looks like Oracle is telling us that we need to add a specific identifier for that group name, and it gives us an example of how to do that. So let's copy that. We'll go ahead and just call it the DBA group. That sounds fine to me. I'm going to Control C out of that process. Let's log in as system. Set def system run authorize. Paste in that command. We used the example group number, so that's correct. Okay, we now have a group identifier named DBA for that particular group. Okay. Connect back as Oracle. Go into our Aura inst directory, disk1. That's where run installer is. Let's try it again. There we go. No errors or warnings there. So Oracle base. This is going to be my ORCL disk1. And I'm just going to have a directory called Oracle at the root of that drive. It doesn't exist. Do I want to create it now? Yes. And then Oracle home is going to be under that Oracle base. So that will be ORCL $D1 Oracle. And then we're going to just call this maybe DB home 1. That looks good. It doesn't like that. It is a logical device name. Please do not specify using the physical disk name. I didn't. That is a logical device name. Okay, we're back. I played around with it a bit more, and it looks like the magic incantation here is that you do actually need the translation equals concealed. But like I mentioned earlier from when I was doing some prior experiments with this, you can't use a concealed subdirectory. So you just want your logical name pointing to a base disk name, but it does need translation concealed set. And then I guess that way the installer doesn't see that name translated to an actual disk name at any time. It just uses that as the logical disk name. So I've made those changes. These logical names are now active, and I think if we run installer now, it will accept ORCL $D1 Oracle and ORCL $D1 Oracle.dbhome1. There we go. Okay. So the scratch path in that README file, it had mentioned scratch path can't be under our Oracle home. I don't remember if it could be under Oracle base, but in any case, we're just going to use users oracle.scratch. That should be a safe location. Yes, we'll create it. Okay. So it's now starting Oracle Universal Installer. Okay, here we are. Welcome to the installer. You can hit next to proceed. And we'll install the Oracle Database Server. Enterprise Edition is fine. Obviously, these install size estimates are incorrect. And it's inheriting those values that we set when we were launching the installer. So the path for our Oracle home is going to be, and it's converted it to a Unix style path, where essentially the first component is the logical name and then the directory structure under that. And it's going to give it a name of OR11G home 1. So that's really just informational in this installer. Again, if you're used to installing on Unix, you'd actually be filling this in here rather than it being a pre-execution step. One other big point to note about the installer on OpenVMS, if you're used to installing Oracle on Unix, is this will not run the database creation assistant for you to create an initial database. We're just doing a database software installation here. So creating the first database will be a separate step. Also, there won't be any questions about database groups and the DBA group or anything like that. Those were all kind of defined by those rights identifiers we created as part of the pre-installation steps. So you'll notice this installation process has far fewer questions once we're actually in this installer than you may be used to on other platforms. All right, that took quite a while for the installer to figure out what it's going to install. You can see here the list of everything. Again, this is the default Enterprise Edition installation. Up at the top, we can confirm that we are indeed installing into Oracle Disk 1, Oracle DB Home. So let's go ahead and install. All right, that felt like it took forever. Let's see, that was a little over 3 hours, maybe 3 hours, 15 minutes. So that installed the software. It hasn't created our first database or database server process yet or anything like that. So we will go ahead and exit the installer. Yes, we really want to exit. It'll take a couple seconds to, I guess, clean up some installation resources. It's worth noting that in that over 3 hour process, the installer processes, I don't think, used much more than about half an hour of CPU time. So not particularly CPU bound. I think this is just an artifact of the speed disks were in this era. Kind of a combination of the speed of the disk IO subsystem. That Ultra 320 bus just isn't what we're accustomed to today, as well as the bloat of Oracle by the time we got to Oracle 11. Okay, it's recommending we log out and log in again just to ensure a bunch of temporary logicals and symbols that the installer used get cleared out. So we'll log out. And I'm going to go ahead and pause my recording of the video here. For you, I'll be back in a couple of seconds, but I think I'm going to go grab some dinner and take care of some other things. But the next step will be to log back in, do some basic environment setup, and then create our database. And once the database is created, we'll have a working Oracle instance, and that will be the end of this video. Hello, welcome back. We're right where we left off, and we had just logged out of our VMS system after the Oracle installer ran. So let's go ahead and reconnect. I'll just SSH in again. And you'll see at this point, if I run a Oracle command like SQL+, nothing happens. So again, if you're familiar with Oracle on Unix platforms, you source the aura inv script into your shell after defining your Oracle SID, the system identifier of the database that you want to work with for that session. And that sets up your environment to use Oracle and the Oracle tools. So there's no aura inv script that we can run on VMS, but there is kind of the equivalent. Let's look in the ORCL D1. We called it oracle.dbhome1 directory. So this is our Oracle database home. And within this directory, there is, let's see, aurauser.com. So on VMS, the Oracle user command procedure is what will set up our environment. So we can run that. And now if we were to run, say, SQL+, we have our Oracle tools that we're familiar with. Let's see, let's cancel out of that. Okay. So I'm going to go back to my home directory, which is syslogin. That'll be my user's Oracle directory. And I'm going to edit my login.com procedure. And we want to run that or a user script whenever we log in so that we always have our Oracle environment set up for us. So that was oracle.dbhome1 or a user. Now I'm going to add one other line here, and I'll explain this in a second, but let's see. I don't know if you actually need the dollar signs in DSL scripts. It seems like they're pretty common, so I'm going to add them in just in case. So I'm going to define a logical called aura auto ins Oracle, and I'm going to set that to true. And basically what this is going to do is it will automatically install kind of the system-wide Oracle process, I don't know what else to call it, when I run this Aura user script if the Oracle process isn't already installed. So I'll Control Z out of this. And if I show the processes on the system right now, you can see this process right here. And after running the installer, it set up this process. This is something that I don't think there's an equivalent of on Oracle for Unix or Oracle for Windows. But on VMS, this seems to be some kind of monitor process that facilitates communication of all of the other Oracle tools with, I don't know, with Oracle. So again, this is something that seems to be unique to VMS. It's not something I've run into before. But the Aura user script will automatically run the Oracle installation script, which just starts up this process. And without this process running, nothing else really works. So what happens is if I now log out and log back in, the Oracle little monitor service process is already running here, so nothing new happens. If I show the system again, we just still have that one process running. But if I had rebooted the system or had killed this process, I think, let's see, how do I do this on, I think I do stop/pid, stop/process. Yeah, so let's show system. I can say stop ID equals that. Okay, so that Oracle monitor process is no longer running. Now let's log out and log back in. And did it start it back up? Now let me edit my login.com again to make sure I got this correct. Define ORA auto INS Oracle true. That's good. ORCL D1 Oracle DB1 home or a user. I think that all looks correct. Did the or user thing work? Do we have things like SQL Plus? Yeah, we do. What am I missing here? Oh, I wonder if it thinks it's still installed because the last process, that's probably not the right, just killing this process may not be the right way to stop it. But yeah, so the Aura user script set up all of these other logicals, but the one that we set should be in there too. Let's see, is it undefined Oracle installed server? No, it's not undefined. It might be unassign. Oh, how do I get rid of logical? I thought it was something like unassign. No. Sorry, this isn't really what this video is supposed to be about. But we are kind of learning this stuff together through experimentation. I don't see anything obvious trying to read through. Oh, deassign? I thought, did I not try that? Cancels a logical name assignment. Okay, deassign. Let's show all of those again. Deassign Oracle installed server. Maybe do I need to do deassign? That was a system logical. It's in the system table. Okay, there we go. So let's log in again. Let's see if that makes any difference. No, it doesn't. Okay, we're going to go about this differently. If we go to ORCL D1, Oracle DB Home 1, in addition to our Aura user script, which should automatically install that monitor process, I wonder, let's see. I think there's another script, INS Oracle. Let's run INS Oracle. Okay, so that explicitly installs that monitor process. So we got our monitor process back. I'm not sure why INS Oracle isn't automatically installing it, since we defined that Aura auto INS Oracle to be true. Again, it may be something just that I don't understand about having forcefully killed the old monitor process. There might be something on the system that still makes the INS Oracle script think that it was running. So it's neither here nor there. We've solved that problem for now. I am pretty confident that if I were to reboot or something, our current login.com script will start that process back up if it needs to. I just want to make sure I didn't make a typo there. Aura, auto, INS, Oracle. Okay, yeah, that looks fine. So we installed Oracle. Really, the last thing we need to do here after we set up our environment like this is create our database. And Oracle has a utility, the Database Creation Assistant, which will do that. The problem is this Dbca, which is a graphical utility, kind of like the installer. When I've run it before on VMS, it has gotten to a point where I just get a blank gray window and I can't do anything. So I'm not sure what's causing that. I'm not sure if there's some patch I need that I don't have. I don't have access to either additional VMS patches or Oracle patches, not having a support contract for either of those pieces of software. The hobbyist program only kind of gives you whatever patches they released for hobbyists on request at the time that that program was active. And then Oracle, while you can download the base versions of the applications for development use, you don't get any patches or support for them unless you buy a support contract. So the good news is Dbca can also be run with a command line interface. If we do dbca-help, I think we'll get a list of all of the options. And with the response file, you can, let's scroll up a bit here. Configure a database, create database. So you can provide a bunch of parameters for creating the database. You can also provide a response file that allows you even greater control over what you're doing. But the options that are available just through flags are enough for us to create a pretty standard default database. The problem on VMS is that DCL only supports, I think, 8 command line parameters to a process. So we're going to need more than 8 parameters to create our database. And to account for that, the OpenVMS version of Dbca has a special feature, or it may be a feature on other platforms. I've just never had to use it. But if you create a file called dbca.args, you're able to put the command line arguments you want for Dbca into this file. And when you run Dbca, it will check this file for command line arguments. And then after it's run, it will rename the file dbca.args_old so that the next time you run Dbca, you don't accidentally run it with these same arguments. So the arguments we need are, we're going to run in silent mode, which is the non-interactive mode. We are going to create a new database. We're going to use the database template. And that's going to be general purpose.dbc. This will create a general purpose database. This would have been one of the template names available to choose from in the graphical database creation assistant. We need to set the global database name. I'm going to call it vmsdb1.lab.mattwilson.org. We can give it a SID, which is kind of the short system identifier for the database, usually the first element of the global database name. So vmsdb1. We need to give the sys account a password. Let's see. I'm just let me randomly generate a password over here and paste that in. And we need to give a password to the system account. I'm going to use the same randomly generated password. We can tell it we do not want the sample schema to be created. Memory percentage. I hope I typed that right. We can give it the percentage of the system memory we want this Oracle instance to use. We have 16 gigs of RAM. I think 20% of that should be more than enough. The data file destination is where we want the data files. Here we use kind of the Unix style paths to represent VMS paths. So the first element after the root directory is the logical, and then the rest of it is the directory structure under that logical. So here's where I'm going to put this on the Oracle D2 disk. And again, I'm going to make an Oracle directory under that, and then we'll have an Aura data directory. The database creation assistant will then automatically create a subdirectory under this that matches the database system ID. Similarly, our recovery area destination. This would ideally be on a different physical disk, but I'm just going to stick it under Aura recovery, and that will create a subdirectory for this database. I want to use the UTF-8 character set. So in Oracle, that's AL32 UTF-8. It might still default to something like ISO 8859 or some Windows character set if you don't specify that, but we want to go ahead and make all of our text storage in the database be UTF-8. And I'm not sure if you need this last parameter, but we're just going to say response file, no value. We don't want to use a response file. We're just going to use the values provided on the command line. So Control-Z to save that. And now if I run dbca, it should pick up the fact that we have this file in the current directory called dbca.args. And rather than launching the interactive database configuration assistant, it should start creating that database for us from the general purpose database template. Okay, it does look like that is starting to work. So again, if you're used to most database servers, MySQL, Microsoft SQL Server, Postgres, any number of other database servers, once you install the server, you just start the server, and then something like a create database command to create a new database takes less than a second, often on modern hardware, maybe a couple seconds if you're on something really slow. But that's not the case with Oracle. There isn't just a server process to start. Each individual database ends up being its own sort of complete architecture and server process with its own processes and memory space. And creating one of those databases is quite an involved process. In this case, Database Configuration Assistant is copying a template database, that general purpose database, so that it has a starting point for the database and the configuration for the server process. If you don't want the settings of the general purpose database, if you wanted different block sizes or different schemas included by default, you'd actually have to create a database from scratch, which takes even longer because you're not just copying some template pre-created database files. So again, Oracle is a very, very weird beast. I mean, you have to give them credit that for quite a while, they were the most scalable, most capable relational database management system. But I think it just got too big for its own good and too expensive for its own good and too bloated for its own good. And there are just other options that have a much more modern feel and don't need nearly as much care and feeding that serve probably 95% of the market that Oracle has traditionally served. So in any case, this will be a while, which is the theme for all things Oracle. So I'm going to speed things up here, and we will talk again for you in a few seconds, for me in, I don't know, quite a while. Okay, it looks like that completed successfully. Let's see, it created and started an Oracle instance. I'm not sure if it actually left the Oracle instance running. Let's show system. Oh yeah, so we can see all of the Oracle instances here. So I wonder if I do SQL plus no logon, and if I connect to the local database as sys, Dbca, indeed, we appear to have a working SQL instance. So I can do select star from DBA tables. We'll list all of the tables on the system, which there's quite a few. Again, these are all not end user created application tables. These are all of just the built-in Oracle tables for all of the different features. Okay, that's maybe too much. Let's Control C that. Perfect. Excellent. So I'm going to log out again and log back in. And I'm going to make one more change to our, actually, let me show you. If I just run SQL plus no log again now and connect /as sysdba, right, it tells us that the TNS net service name is incorrectly specified. And that's because we need to tell it which Oracle instance we want to connect to. Since we only have one on our system, I'm just going to go ahead and set that at logon. And we will define another logical called, let's see, it would be aura sid. And that's normally you'd set this as an environment variable on a Unix system, but here we define it as a logical. And I'll set that to that sid for the database I just created. Save that. Let's run our login script again. And now if I run SQL plus no log, connect /as sysdba, we connect to that MWVMS DB1 or whatever I called it database. So, you know, now I can create a table, what can we call it? People, username, make that a varchar 8 long, name is maybe a varchar 50 long, insert into people, values, M. Wilson, Matthew Wilson, select star from people, and sure enough, we have a table. We can put data in it. We can drop the table, drop table users. No, I called it people. Drop table people. So now that table's gone. We can also shut down our database. And if we want any kind of remote connectivity to Oracle, that goes through the TNS listener. So again, something you'll be familiar with if you've used Oracle before. And if we do listener control status, we'll see that there is no listener running. So the reason I shut down the database is so I can start the listener. So ls-nrctl start. Again, there's so much that's just like Oracle on Unix, but some things are just slightly different because VMS is very, very different from Unix in many ways. But we have our listener running now. So now we can start our database by starting SQL Plus without logging in, connecting to the local instance as sysdba. And it's an idle instance. So if we run startup, this will start this database back up again. So let's see, the SGA looks like it's about 1.6 gigs. So that probably corresponds roughly to 20% of our memory. Is that right? And that's about 10% of our memory, right? If we have 16 gigs. So I guess the SGA, then these are separate areas. These aren't subsets of the SGA. So if you add our database buffers into our SGA, that gets us up to about 20% of our memory, I guess. Yeah, we can do the math later. In any case, now our database is running. Now if I do listener control status, we can see that this listener, which is running on port 1521 on our IP interface, is now servicing the database VMS DB1. So I'd actually be able to connect remotely to this Oracle server on port 1521 using the database service name vmsdb1.lab.mattwilson.org, and any Oracle client software will be able to use this database. So that's about it. We have a working database. It's accessible over the network. Our Oracle user, as soon as we log in after a reboot, will start up the Oracle monitor process and incorporate the Oracle commands into our environment. We would then be able to start up the listener and start up the database, and we're off to the races. So that was mostly, for me anyway, sitting waiting for installation activities to occur. But for you, it was mostly watching me fumble around with how to get everything set up correctly, and actually learning a little bit more about VMS in the process as I worked through some of those little glitches that I had introduced in my setup procedure. So hopefully that was interesting. This has been, I think 3 VMS videos in 3 days. I'm not sure what would be next on the VMS plate, but I might come up with something for you. Or it may be another break for a couple weeks on the channel until we see more mainframe or AS400 content. You never know. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.